Well, hello. Let's get ready here. A little jittery this morning. Hi. What's happening, all? What's going on? What are you doing out there? Oh, man. Who's here? We got Steven here. Or Stefan. Sorry if I got that wrong. Chris. We got Thomas. We got Henrik. Oh, we got Van Boingo. What's happening? Quincy and TC and Yoan. What happened this week? I put out a video for the fuzz pedal, the 76. This guy, new release from Solid Gold FX up there in Canada, and I put out a video for the Friedman update to the Dirty Shirley Mini, which is called the Little Sister now. So, Little Sister has an added switch and mode and voicing compared to the Dirty Shirley Mini. So that one's been discontinued, and now they've just got the Little Sister. That's what it's called. That's what it's called. Sorry. Runny nose or something. What else have I got going on? Sitting right here, you can't see it, but it's the little Friedman Pink Taco, which there's an update to it, I think, to the voicing as well, and a video for that be coming out on Tuesday. So I'm working on that right now. It sounds really good. It's very, very just like instant Van Halen Marshall-y to me. That's what was my impression when I started recording a video for it yesterday. So if you're looking for that in a box, look no further. It really does that sound really, really well. Just that stringy, hot Marshall plexi thing. Great for that. Really, really good. I spontaneously just started jamming Van Halen riffs, and I'm going to put that in the video because it sounds cool. What else do we got here? Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I got videos, a lot of videos to make, man. I got to make a video for that new Black Star amp pedal I think I showed you last week. Very exciting new other pedal I have here that I can't tell you about because it's a big release and can't tell you what it is, but it's coming out soon, probably in about a month, I think. A little less than a month, maybe. Chris is asking, in my opinion, having tried them both now, how different is the Pink Taco from the Little Sister? I would say it's pretty different. It's pretty, it's definitely much more modded super lead, whereas the Little Sister to me actually sounds more kind of JCM 800, or if you, depending on how you set it, more JTM 45. There's definitely crossover there. It can sound plexy, but it's like the Taco has a little bit more of that hot upper mid. Just the voicing is that stringy hard rock thing. Just wants to, that explosive kind of stringy hard rock thing. The other one's a little more Zeppelin. There's you can find crossover there for sure, but it's a different voicing. A little darker, probably in some ways. A little more relaxed. One's a little more aggressive, and the other one's a little more relaxed in the voicing, I would say. What compressor am I running on my board now? I'm using a Woodshed from Sir, which is a Andy Wood's signature pedal. Really nice. It's got a great sound. I know that Andy was a big fan of the old Carl Martin compressor, the same one Andy Timmons uses. It's just a really, really good pedal, that old Carl Martin. It's got a fat kind of, it's a great in a sort of transparent way. Like I think Andy leaves it on all the time. It's kind of an always on pedal for him. And they're really good in that way. So the Woodshed, I believe, started life like looking at that as kind of like the inspiration, and then Andy wanted a mini pedal, so they made it in small format. But I really like it. It does everything I want. There's no weird artifacts or anything, and it just has a great kind of transparent sound to it that still pumps up the sound and that kind of thing, in the way that I like. Pumps up my clean sound to make it feel better and all that. Guitar Mike says, got a question that's been baffling me for some time. When home recording, should I use pedals direct into an interface if I don't have an amp? or would software such as Amplitude be better? Well, Mike, you can do either. There's no better, really. I mean, something like Amplitude has the virtual pedals built in and whatnot. And say, like the way that I usually do it, if I use virtual amps or I'm plugging into my computer interface, I run my pedal board, generally speaking, in front of the interface. Just sit up a little bit here. I feel like I'm at the bottom of the screen. I run my pedal board into the interface. I'll use my tuner on it for sure. And then if I just want to turn on a phase 90 or a compressor or something, I'll do that in front of the interface. And then I'll run into, generally speaking, either the PT100 plugin, which I use in UA, because I can use it in the unison slot in UA, which very low latency and all that. And, sometimes I'll use the Friedman Dirty Shirley plugin. I use a lot of the bass plugins. I'm always doing bass TI. So, oops, lowered my chair. Lately been using Helix actually as a plugin within Helix native within Logic to do bass quite a bit. But I'll also use the B15 from UA a lot. That's a classic. I love it. And the GK 800, if I want a real clean kind of solid state amp bass sound, I'll use that. But anyway, running the pedal board in front, it's totally cool to run pedals in front of interfaces. You just have to be like, you can't like take a really, really hot fuzz with a ton of output or a clean boost and nail the front of your interface with like 30 dB of gain or something, because you're going to clip the ADD converter on the input of your interface. But you can use overdrives and all kinds of stuff that kind of stays at unity or even boosts a little bit because there's some headroom there, for sure. So, but, you might also find that you just want to plug straight into the interface and then use the virtual tube screamer in Amplitude or whatever, and that's okay too. And there's no right or wrong. It's kind of whatever works, you can do it either way. And I'm sure you could get great sounds both ways, that'd make a nice YouTube video. I mean, the real pedals or the plug-in pedals in front of a plug-in amp, I guess, which is better. Let's compare a phase 90 in Amplitude and a real phase 90. The lines are blurred, and you can use this stuff however you like these days, as long as you get good music out of it. Where can we get some of your QC presets? I just haven't really made any available like publicly. Presets and profiles and all that kind of stuff, I haven't done a hell of a lot of that. I know I'm missing out on income. There's lots of guys that make Kemper profiles and sell them, or Helix presets and sell them, and I'm all set up to do that within the Helix sort of infrastructure and all that, and I just have never done it. And I've been saying I'm going to do it forever, and I just don't. And it's like one of those things where I just have to sit down and go, okay, this weekend is all about making Helix presets. And then I make them and then put them in the marketplace, or, whatever, Kemper profiles. And I just set it up, because I know it's kind of silly. There's one of the ways that, as far as, diversifying as a musician these days, in these days of the crazy music business, is like taking advantage of all these things, because if people are willing to, it's just as food for thought out there for you guys. It's like, I've been seeing all these articles lately about how the music business is kind of unsustainable these days. I'm taking this in a little different direction than what your question is, but I just offering this food for thought. Like, bands can't make any money in this economy. It's really expensive to travel and all that and stuff. And so it's difficult, for live bands and music. And it's just like, it's unsustainable even for big pop artists, or for it's a difficult time. But part of staying afloat in this business, one of the most important things you can do is seeing an opportunity and then diversifying and taking advantage of it. I feel like, and that's one of those things where it's just like one more thing that I should be doing. And I just haven't, but anybody out there could be doing it. If you've got a nice collection of amps, or if you've got it's just a way to earn a little scratch, that, because people, I mean, I've bought Kemper profiles and packs from people from Top Jimmy, and I've got Michael Britz and, stuff like that. Traditionally, it's just something I've avoided, but I should do it. And it just, if your accountant's like mine, when you go to do your taxes at the end of the year, they'll give you the gold star for diversification, for, being an entrepreneur. He always likes to see, that sort of thing. Like, oh, how have you been creative this year with ways to earn income? Anyways, so wish the Universal Audio would update the aux. So much potential and already amazing piece of gear. What would you like to see in it? that would be actually my question. How would you like them to update it and do things differently? I'm just curious. As far as like, you know, you mean like a software update? Thoughts on two different speakers in a 212 can work. Can not work also. Main thing is the efficiency. If it's too far off between the two speakers, I don't like that. If it's more than a couple dB, then I find the blend just the one will take over, the louder one, the more efficient. So if you got a 96 dB efficiency speaker and a 98 dB or 99 dB, you're not going to really hear the 96. It's just that 3 dB is enough where the other one just sort of takes over, and then you're missing out sort of on what you wanted, which is a blended sound of some sort. But if they're within a dB or even two of each other, it can be cool. You know, classic is always to do a G12H30 and a G12M25 or a V30 and a greenback, you know, those types of things. Two different creamback 65, creamback 75. And it can be neat. I've had a V30 and a gold in an old Bogner cabinet that disappeared. Bogner oversized 212. That was a neat cabinet. I liked the sound of the gold blended with the V30. That worked pretty well. With all this said, when we went to do the PT100 212 cabinet many years ago for the original PT100 head, we wanted to mate a 212, so we needed a speaker that would have a high power handling because there's only going to be two and it's 100 watt amp. So we landed on the 75 watt creamback, and I auditioned a bunch of different blends when we did that, the 65 and the 75 and a V30 and this and that. We listened to all Celestians, but what we ended up with is the 275s just sounded perfect. I remember saying to John, I was like, this has it all. This just, when you put these two speakers, same two speakers, together, it sounds great, clean. It's got a nice overdrive sound across the board. It seemed to be really versatile, and there was nothing weird, and it just sounded strong, and like what I wanted. And so we just ended up going with the two, which was simpler anyway. So yeah. Did you hear DOD and Digitech is coming back? I did hear that. I just saw something about it briefly. But that's great. They make really cool stuff. Yeah, the Freak Out is still on my board right now. So you're asking if I've got any favorites of theirs. Definitely the Freak Out. The good old 250 was a great pedal. I know the delays and reverbs from the Hardwire. I think they're called the Hardwire line. Is that right? Like Lukather used those, and maybe still does on his board for a long time. Like, Dave Friedman was a big fan of them. I know that. So they make some really cool stuff for sure. Let's see. What else have we got here? What do I think of the Headrush gig boards? Headrush are cool. They're kind of like the brand that doesn't get talked about as much as like Axe Effects and Line 6 and stuff, but they're really good, and they've got their devotees, and I've done a number of videos for them, and I like the sounds. They were the first ones to do kind of the touch screen thing, which was neat and kind of revolutionary in its own way. I really like the video that I came up with, a song called "A Rush to the Head," I think, a long time ago, and I liked the tune and the sounds so much that I put it out as a single when I did a video for that pedal. So that was kind of the original one. And then the smaller new ones are really nice too, My buddy Tracy Guns, he's a endorser and really likes those pedals, and so yeah, cool stuff. It's as far as my own use of modelers and stuff these days, I guess I'm living these days. I mean, I've used them all, and I love Fractal does great stuff. Just what I'm using, I'm using the Quad Cortex right now, quite a bit, and it's just worked its way into my sort of ecosystem. And I'm using the Helix on bass a lot to record. I love the SVT just cranked up with the drive way up and the treble way up. The way it pulls up in Helix is a great rock bass sound. So I'm just using that a lot for rock bass. And those are ones I'm kind of using. The thing about the the quad, the main thing, and I know I've said this before, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the thing I really like about it is just the ease of use and the simplicity, and that the way that's worked into my kind of like, you know, workflow. Like it's just very, very, very simple. And the sounds are great. I don't have to crack a manual. I can figure out how to do everything without just by trial and error, you know. And that's been nice. You know, I'm not saying it's perfect, you know, there's probably things I would change, little things, but it's just very, very, very simple. So have you tried Easy Drummer 3? No, actually I haven't. I didn't know that. I should go to TuneTrack and probably update. That's interesting. I have Superior 3, so I'm mainly using Superior. I don't really use Easy Drummer that much anymore unless there's like a specific Easy Drummer kit that I like. I've got this alt rock pack for TuneTrack for Easy Drummer, and it's got some nice roomy drum sounds in it. So if I'm not finding the right drum sound, sometimes I'll go to Easy Drummer instead of Superior and see if I can find something. And it still sounds good. Nobody knows if I'm using Superior or Easy Drummer or anything anyway. The Easy Drummer is terrific, you know, for what it is. It's great. So yeah. The Rover says, please talk the financial, because damn, I'm hurting. Well, you know, the great thing these days is if you I understand, you know, if you're a guitar player and you want to, you know, figure out some extra ways to make some money. I mean, like online lessons has never been, you know, coming up with a lesson pack. If you think you've got something interesting to teach, come up with something and then start putting it out, you know, hosting it on a website and make it available for as a lesson for $20 or $25. You know, Rick Graham, I mean, I know this is going way back, but he kind of, you know, was very forward thinking in that way, where he was creating these lessons just at home, you know, I think. And then finding a site where he could host them and then just selling them on his website, you know, this 50 licks or whatever, you know, and they'd be like $25, I think, or 25 pounds per lesson, I think. And he just had a whole page of them, you know, on his website, and he did really well with that. It's kind of amazing when you know, you can put some time in. I mean, I did that with the lesson for Guitar Nerd way back. I sat around for a day or two and came up with a 75-minute lesson where I taught things off the record. You know, here's some, if you buy the record and you like the solos or whatever, or some of the rhythm riffs or whatever, I'm going to teach, you know, 3 or 4 songs off, 3 songs or whatever it was off the record, show you how to play these different solos. And man, people still buy that lesson. That was like 12 years ago that I came up with that. And it's, you know, it just takes like a day or two of sitting around. I mean, if you don't know how to video edit and all that, then that's another story. But it is like, if you get, I'm not saying you even have to do that. You could teach over Skype or, you know, one-on-one, that kind of thing. Then it opens, you know, because it's always like, oh, lessons. So, you know, I got to drive to someone's house, or they got to come to me, and then the scheduling, and it's a pain. And then it's just the people in my town. But if you open it up to the whole world, kind of, and you can get a student in Australia and a student, you know, in Des Moines and a student, whatever, you know, and you can put together a good little roster, then that's one way to go too. I'm more of the private lesson thing is okay, but I'm more of a believer in like recording a lesson and then selling it on your, you know, because then you do the work once and then it's money. Well, it's mailbox money when you sleep. And that's really if you can figure out ways to earn income while you're sleeping, then you're really on to something, you know, because now you've got more time freed up to do other things you like to do, be it that work or, you know, hang with your family or different things. So, but all the different ways, you know, selling camper packs. I mean, you see people do it, you know, now it's like, just, you don't have to be a rock star or whatever. You just have to be good at it. You know, if you've got a nice collection of amps and you got a camper, well, you could be doing that, you know, or you could, it's just little ways to earn little income streams that can really make a difference, you know? Yeah. Okay. I'm probably getting way back in the chat, as I always do. So I should keep moving down. Ever thought about doing a vid on what you record in Hints for us home studio guys? On what you record with in Hints? Well, this is once again something that I did. There's a video coming out soon that a a company shot with me on how I sort of, that's from Ryan, how I approach my songwriting as well as production, mixing, the whole 9 yards. So I've made a little lesson on this, and it's going to be pretty cool. I think. I'm just not sure. I got to check with the company and see when it's coming out, because I thought it was supposed to be around now. They could be behind in releases or something, because they put a lot of these kinds of things out. So I should check, but that's coming soon. Any cool stuff coming up in LA? My buddy John Button's going to be here with the Who. He plays bass with them now, so that's at Hollywood Bowl coming up pretty soon. Kind of fun. I don't know what else is happening coming up. I'm going to be playing out in Palm Springs, so not too far from LA, for an event. There's a legendary theater out there where they used to do movie premieres and all kinds of stuff. So the Palm Springs crowd, Frank Sinatra, etc. If they were doing a fancy event, they would do it at this theater. And the theater has fallen into sort of disrepair or whatever, and they want to renovate it and bring it back to its former glory. So there's a benefit going on to raise funds to help restore this classic theater in Palm Springs. And I'm going to be there. It's the 11th, I do believe, of November. I think that's right. It's either the 10th or the 11th. I think it's the 11th. It's going to be some great guests. I get to jam with Paul Rogers, which is going to be a blast. Alice Cooper, Josh Homme, Orianthi, and then kind of a cast of characters. It's John Button's playing bass, actually. My good buddy Matt Sorum on drums. Brian Ray from Paul McCartney's band is the one that pulled me into it. So we're going to be kind of the house band. A guy named Spike Edney as well, that's been MD and keyboard player with Queen for a number of years. So it's a lot of this is going to be a fun group of musicians to get together and jam some tunes and do this benefit. So that's coming up soon. So you can get tickets for that. Let me find the website. Let's see. And I will post the link if anybody's interested. If you're in the Inland Empire, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's called the Plaza Theater, and I believe the event is called Rock the Plaza. I don't think it's actually being held at the Plaza. I'm pretty sure, but Plaza Theater, 128 South Palm Canyon Drive. And here's the website. I just found it, so you can find out about the event. Save the Historic Theater in Palm Springs. Here it is. I can't believe I get to jam with some of these folks. It's gonna be fun. Get to play some classic, amazing tunes with the Paul Rogers there. I just put it in the Save the Plaza, Rock the Plaza. You can check it out there. Should be really fun. I've played with lots of folks, but I've never got to jam with Paul. He's somebody says Blue Sky says Paul Rogers was one of my favorite voices. Me too. Underrated, like fantastic singer, right? So like great tunes. So that's going to be a real thrill. Excited about that. So what else we got here? I'm going to start from the bottom of the chat here, and because I moved all the way down to post that. So let's see if I've missed your question, please just ask one more time. Let's see. My Knees Hurt is talking about the CB1 headphones, which I have right here. $69 in Amazon. These are fantastic sounding headphones. I just saw my friend Yuki in Japan actually in an ad, and she's wearing those. It's an ad for Nike or something, but she's using those headphones. Small pointless aside there, but yeah. Okay, what else have we got? Do I stack gain pedals from high to low or the other way around? I always believe it's from low to high. Yeah, low to high. That's what I would say. I mean, generally speaking, your high gain pedal is going to be a distortion, right? And I tend to put those, I think of them as the amp. So if I'm running into a clean amp, I'm going to have the distortion at the Yes, you're right. Low to high is a kind of one way to think about it. At the back end, and then you maybe put a delay and a chorus and a reverb or something after it. Chorus, delay, reverb in that order, maybe. But yeah, the distortion pedal is way down in the chain. Then before that, you can have your boosts and your fuzzes and stuff like that to kind of, as though they're running into the amp, and the amp is the distortion at the end of the pedal chain. Yeah, that's the way I like to think of that. Just got a pod go since I spend weeknights in hotels. Already happy with the sounds. Great. Tips for optimal headphone settings. Well, one thing that I like to do with all the Line 6 stuff is I prefer to load my own IRs. So that's the first thing I would recommend. Get a great starter place to go is the Celestion pack. Just the 412 with greenbacks. Get those, load them in. And I find that that's a big, boon for any Line 6, because I like Line 6 a lot. I love them, just not crazy about a lot of their cab sims. Some of them I like. The bass ones I really like. I love the stock ones for the SVT and stuff, but I like to just, so it's easy enough to do. It's a $5 investment or whatever, buy some IRs and then throw them in there and away you go. So that's the number one thing I would say that will change the sound of the unit the most to be really pleasing. Ben Tom says, damn it, I'm always late. Dude, I'm always late these days too. It's the added layer of having a cat to take care of actually right now. It's just like it tends to push me another 10 or 15 minutes out. The cat has decided that he likes to go outside, and I don't really have an outside where I live, so I sort of take him outside, but he'll sit there and whine and whine and whine. I just tend to take him out and let him roam around for 10, 15 minutes or whatever, but that can set me back a little bit because I feel bad. I feel guilty about leaving him home all day. I know he's a cat and he's independent and all that, but I feel like he's going a little stir crazy. So Ben says he put his cat outside before we started. Blue Sky says we need a benefit down here in Florida. We're wiped out. The entire coast is devastated. Many are homeless with nowhere to go. I know, it's just terrible what's happened there, and I agree. And I was actually thinking of that, sort of thinking of contacting my friend Mitch and seeing because he lives up around around Destin. I was wondering if we could do something in Destin to as a benefit for. I don't know. He's the only guy I know kind of out that way. But anyways, it's a terrible thing what's happened down there for sure, and I've got a couple friends around that area, and it just looks like what a nightmare to have to deal with. So I'm really sorry to hear that. But Blue Sky, maybe I'll put in a call this week or something, see if maybe there's something that could be done with some of the resources and people that I know out there. Stefan or Steven? I'm sorry, I was saying that's Stefan, right? Paul Rogers is married to a Saskatoon lady. That's really interesting. I like Saskatoon. Saskatoon's a cool town. Just showed up too. Still talking about Pete's chair. My chair is an IKEA I don't know how to say it, but it's an IKEA office chair that when I got it was around $250 or $300, I think. And I really love this chair. I mean, it really helped my back. To be honest, I was having back pain for a long time. And, as important as amps and IRs and load boxes and guitars are, the studio chair is a great, important part of I was really having a lot of lower back pain where I was like just sore all the time. And I got this chair, and honestly, 2 months later, I was like, my back doesn't hurt anymore, and it was totally the chair that I was sitting in here. So it makes a big difference. So I was looking at like Relax the Back and all these different stores and seeing chairs that were $800, $900, even on sale, that were kind of just like this chair, really. And this chair was actually given to me as a gift, and I thought, okay, let's try this one, and it's been great. It's everything I could want, So, look for office chairs with proper back lumbar support or whatever it's called, and from IKEA, and you'll find this one. I can even take a nap in it. It's got a great kind of recline where you can put it back and sleep for 10 minutes, which I do sometimes at my advanced age. What's my opinion on successful musicians who don't know anything about music theory? I'm thinking about Dave Grohl. I don't think it matters really, to be honest. If you're working within your genre or your idiom and you don't feel a need for it, then it's just fine. I don't really think it matters. If you're doing film work and you're performing with a symphony, if there's a bunch of different places where you've got to know how to read music and you've got to understand some degree of music theory and have some of the written language and stuff to understand it, but I don't really think it matters when you're trying to communicate emotion or musical ideas. That if you're a songwriter, I mean, there's plenty of examples of this. Billy Sheehan doesn't know any music theory. He just knows where to put his fingers. He always says that, like he's a legendary bass player, shredder, right? He has no idea of scales or anything, but he just knows where the right notes are for what's happening. I've actually been in a rehearsal with him where it was with Thomas Blug, and we were learning a few tunes, and one of them had a different arrangement that Thomas wanted to do from whatever Billy had listened to, and Thomas said, "Okay, just play it for me." And Thomas was like, "Well, okay, it's going to go from the C to the inversion to the whatever." And he goes, No. Just play me what you are doing. Just play it. And, Thomas was thinking a little bit more like, I'll just explain it. And he's like, no, play it. So he played him the chords through. It's going to go here. It's going to go here. Billy's like, okay. And then he just knew how to play it after that. So, using your ear or, it's just as valid. It doesn't really matter, although that does illustrate that sometimes, some musicians are going to want to communicate things in it. I guess, it's the language of music, the music theory, the language, being able to write things down or write a chart or whatever, and then put it in front of you and play it. Yes, there's advantages there, but in Dave Grohl's world, it doesn't matter. He's in the Foos. He's going to rehearse. He's got his own studio. He's got the space. He's a songwriter. It's all about writing, recording music, going out, performing that music in front of people, rehearsing it, and then going out and performing it. And that's his wheelhouse. So he's never going to go in and do a film session where he has to sit down and read a chart. It's just not something that he has to do. If he wanted to tackle that, then yeah, you'd probably have to learn how to read, So, yeah. Or play, jazz gig where it's like, yeah, we're going to jam over this and it's going to go from this to this diminished chord to this. And then you'd have, so I need to play over that. Okay. Well, I can do this there and this there because this scale or this arpeggio will work over that chord or, and knowing that kind of stuff. It just depends on the musical situations you're in. So that's what I think. There's so many different ways to make music. Yeah. There's different, it's not all the same, that's for sure. With these types of gigs, I think you're saying about the gig that we're doing in Palm Springs. How do they work? Do they give you a set list of what may be jammed on? Yes. Yeah, it's like it's all discussed before, and we'll do some rehearsing and then get together and do the show. So yeah, it's generally fairly planned out. Has to be, right? Can't just get up and, well, what do you guys want to do? I don't know that one. Well, how about this one? Oh, the drummer doesn't know that one. Can't get up and do that. So yeah, it's all fairly worked out in advance. What else are you guys talking about here? Let's see. Just looking through the chat here, going back a little bit. Well, that's a nice compliment. Every single gear company should hire you for the demos because your playing is inspired. Thanks. When I get to write a song at the beginning, that's what's inspiring, because I don't approach the videos as demos when I'm writing the song. I'm just dialing in a sound and then seeing how I get inspired, and then I'm trying to push myself. I got thinking about it the other day. It really is a lot of work, like doing the video for these a couple of different Friedman amps, as well as it's just like things I've been doing. I put a lot of time into it, but it's not time that I don't like spending. It's like God, if I could do these faster, it would be great. But I'm not having a bad time. I'm having a great time when I'm doing it. So it's time well spent, I guess. It's just that I can't really do it any faster than I can do it. They take as long as they take, and that's it. Because I like doing things to my standard. And any YouTuber worth anything, I think, actually does that. I was watching Trey Xavier from Gear Gods. He's changing the name of his channel to just his name, Trey. And he did a video the other day where he said, I work really hard on these videos. They take he was explaining why he's changing the name of he wants to kind of expand and not for the channel be just about gear, but about making music. And he's a really bright guy. He's a nice guy. I like him. I've met him a number of times. He's kind of with Sweetwater most recently at the Gear Fest and stuff. And anyway, he was saying, I want the videos to be like, he's like, I basically work all day on this stuff. I get up and do it. And I get that. That's kind of like everybody that, you feel the, like, I don't know if it's pressure or whatever, and you can get burned out doing it, but it's also great. It's like a really good feeling, working on these things and finishing one and then being able to put it out. And, yeah, so it's cool. And it's also the independent thing is what's I'm realizing is what I'm enjoying so much about it, that I don't have to answer to anybody really. I know I've got to do great work, but everybody seems to be happy if I just work. If I satisfy myself, number one, like I don't put out anything substandard, in my opinion, then that seems to work for everyone else, and I guess that's art, right? Or whatever, it's your own, like, because I'm not thinking about these videos. It's like songs, if you work hard and you make yourself happy, you're your own worst critic. Other people are going to criticize and go, he sucks or whatever, but you're going to find your little tribe of people that go like, wow, I like that, but it's because you put your heart and soul into it. So as long as you don't phone it in, it just seems to work. Blah, blah, blah. Proton 45 with the super chat says, cats usually like windows. Find a window that overlooks an active area and make sure that they have room to get comfortable. Yeah, I do that, but he doesn't, unfortunately, like I put a chair in front of my window every day so that he can go there and sit and look out at it, because there's big old trees and there's squirrels out there and stuff, but he doesn't seem to do that much anymore. Maybe he does, and I'm just not seeing it during the day, but I guess I should, I was thinking of getting a better big old cat tree kind of thing, but then I'm that guy that's got that stuff in his house. I mean, I try to make them comfortable, but I don't want my house to look like it's overrun with like a crazy cat person lives there. That's the only thing. So anyways, it's only so big. I don't live in a big place. But thank you. I appreciate that, Proton 45. I have been thinking about it. Yeah. How do you play an instrument and not learn to read music? What's funny is, okay, so when I picked up, first instrument was violin, started reading. Was okay at reading on violin. Second instrument, it was around 6th grade maybe. Second instrument around 7th grade in school. I learned, I got assigned clarinet in band. How exciting. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I wanted, to play electric bass or sax. Those were the two in jazz band in school or whatever that I thought, okay, that'd be cool. Clarinet. Here's your clarinet. Okay. But I could read on clarinet pretty good, Move to guitar, no interest in reading at all. And so I think that you're going to find there's a lot of, like, how many of you guys, we should do a poll. How many of you guys watching this right now read? I'm going to bet it's like 20% maybe. Or some of you can probably read a little, but you don't anymore. That's like me, man. I mean, I can read, I think I can read Japanese as well as I can read music. To be honest. I mean, because I just don't work on it anymore. I work on Japanese more than I do working on reading music. So music for me is literally like, okay, have I got to do this? Okay, every good boy deserves fudge, the 5 lines, and then FACE, face, the lines in the middle. Okay, I can do that. Okay, that note is a da-da-da, that note is a da-da-da. And that's how I read music now if I have to, if I absolutely have to. And looking at a chord stack is just like, oh, really? Like, whereas some people can look at that and they read it like they read the newspaper, but in the course of my work, man, sitting in here doing what I do, I never read music. Why? It's just like, it's not something that as a rock musician that we do. So, and I learn things by ear. So when, somebody's saying this gig coming up, how are you going to, nobody's sending me charts. I mean, I'm going to get a playlist or a Dropbox full of songs, and I'm going to go and pop them on and listen and learn, and that's how I've always done it for 35 years or whatever. So, it's just not really necessary within rock to read. Nashville cats. Maybe you guys are talking about in Nashville. Nashville, yeah, they read more. But Nashville, they've got their own chart system. and it's, it's a different thing. So yeah, there's some reading going on, but it's also just it's charts. And I'm okay at charts. I mean, I can write and read, and make my own chord charts and stuff, but that's not reading music. I have a little I have some theoretical knowledge. I can figure out what a chord is. If I'm playing it, I'm like, well, it's I guess you could call this a da 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 da. So but it's pretty bare bones. I'm a street rock guitar player, really. How many prototypes did you go through to develop your latest model? Well, the red one had a different neck thing going on, so we switched the neck on it. The pickup wasn't the same. I mean, we basically used the red one that I have now, that's kind of my main one, as the prototype. And then the neck got switched, the neck shape got switched, the pickup, the ring, like all this stuff changed on it. But like this guitar is actually, or was it this one or the silver one that we did the pickup? I can't remember, because it was like this. I had the silver one and the red one, and we did some different things with the pickup and the ring and stuff, and so all that changed a little bit. But I basically knew what I wanted. I mean, John does a lot of work before he builds anything in CAD. So he draws things, and and all the dimensions of the neck and everything, it's all done before in CAD. And then they kind of, when he's really, that's where most of the time and everything is spent. All the dimensions of, say, this pick guard and the ring and everything is all drawn out on computer, and you can look at it on the computer. You can literally take the guitar and spin it like this and see every single angle and stuff. And when you make the smallest changes, it's all reflected, right? And then it really is just a matter of then pushing go. The body gets cut, the pickguard gets cut, the neck gets cut, and then everything's finished by hand, of course, when it's put together. But all the main dimensions of everything, all that stuff is all done in CAD. So you're kind of doing a lot. It's just a different way to build now. You're doing a lot of stuff, a lot of the work virtually. And then so we want to change that, because why build one if you're not, you know what I mean? Like, you can see basically what it's going to be, and it's kind of fascinating, actually. And then you make the guitar at the end, and then you're going to hand tweak a few things. So yeah. Originally the guitar had a rosewood fingerboard, and I changed that to ebony and did some different stuff, and so it was an interesting process for sure. Michael says, I miss your shows with Tim Pierce. I do too. I love Tim. I miss doing shows with Tim. So I'd love to do more if we can figure out a way to do that at some point here. Do you still use your quad Cortex? I use it all the time. I mean, I used it last week for a show. I've used it in so many different ways at this point as well. I should point out, like I've used it direct. God, I've used it in so many different ways. When I first started using it live, it was Classic Rock Show. I was using it on the direct out of my PT-15 to add stereo effects and split into stereo and go into the PA in stereo. So then I had basically virtual stereo rig, but starting with my tube head, as the tone source on that tour. That was earlier this year. Then I did some gig. I think the next gig I did with it was I was using it for cable method with a PT-100, and it was MIDI switching my amp, because it's MIDI, and so it was all my pedals and effects and everything were basically done virtually in the quad, but using the PT-100 for amp sounds, so 4 cable in mono rig, and that worked great. That's what I did with it last week. And then kind of in the interim, I've also done some gigging with it where it's been the main tone source, and I've used it on a pedal board, gone out to a power amp and some cabinets on stage, and also split out of the XLRs to go to the PA for speaker sounds. So I've used it in all these different ways, and this is what I mean. It comes in handy in so many different ways. The course where I went to Canada recently to film something for this recording and production course that I've got coming out, that I took it on too, and I just use it direct, for all the sounds, because it was just easy. I was going to try and figure out a way to incorporate my amp and stuff into that, but it was like getting one up to go to Canada to do it and everything, bringing things. I was like, it's going to cost excess bags and do all that. I was just like, why don't I'm just going to use this. It's too much to worry about. There's already enough to worry about with the workload that I had to do while I was up there. So once again, problem solved by using it. So it's a really great piece of gear. It's a problem solver, and I've had great results with it. And no reservations about using it at all. John, thanks, John, for the super chat. He says, if John Sir were to ask me to design my humbucker, would be the Thorn Booker 2. You nailed it. So you got one. That's awesome. With my mahogany-bodied parts caster and my BE, I couldn't be happier. Warm, fat, and clear. Yeah, it sounds really like I've been doing this video for Dave's amp here, the Pink Taco version 2. And man, this pickup, the Thorn Booker 2 into that amp, it's just, it sounds so Van Halen and awesome. It just sounds great. Like it's fat. It's exactly like you say. It's warm, fat, and clear. It's just killer. You know, if you get a chance, try and put a push-pull for parallel too. I don't know if you've done that, John, but I love that sound too. For certain things, you know, if you're just playing, well, I just really like it. I mean, if you know, it's whether or not you'd find it useful, I don't know, but I do. So thanks for getting it. Keith says, I have to say you've always steered me in the right direction when it goes to choosing the right gear. Well, thanks. I hate to, you know, ever steer anybody the wrong way. That's for sure. So hopefully, you know, people can, you know, tell when I play something, even if they don't like it, you know, that it's like, well, that's not for me. I hope that, you know, that I'm sure that happens all the time. Yeah. Let's see. Looking through the chats, there's another super chat. Thanks, Robert. Has learning and playing the bass helped or influenced your guitar playing? I don't know if it's helped my guitar playing, but I really enjoy it. That's the main thing. I love playing bass. You know, I would love to tour on bass, man. I'd love to do a tour with, you know, I'm a really basic bass player. I'm not, you know, a brilliant or exciting bass player, that's for sure. You know, I just, but I feel like I come up with pretty cool bass lines actually sometimes on my stuff, like, and I really enjoy it. Like I love the juxtaposition of, you know, bass and guitar and trying to find two things that work together and locking with the drums and that whole thing. It's almost like a hobby. It's been like a different, you know, like I'm mainly a guitar player, but I love the idea of locking in on bass and just sitting on a thing like a groove and a riff that works with the kick drum pattern or whatever, and just really, you know, there's so many, you know, like I really just love like what's great, like Sting's an amazing bass player. Like I love how he, you know, some really great bass lines and how he was able to play and sing like that, because the bass and the singing are so distinctly off from one another that it's that, you know, walking and chewing gum thing, you know, whatever, going like this, you know, like, so he was amazing at that. But I love those bass lines, and like probably one of my favorite bass lines ever is Pump It Up by Elvis Costello. You know, it's like that bass part is so it's so cool. What is it? Boom. I don't know how that you would finger that. All right. I don't have the key right, but that's how it goes. Anyway, I've never learned it, but that's how it goes. So I've just had to pull it from memory. But anyways, I love that. Like just sitting on that and grooving with the drums, well, it's so cool, you know. Like I would love to learn a whole bunch of cool bass parts like that, and then just play in a band, just play bass. I actually did play bass in a cover band for a little while in the 90s. Every Tuesday night I had a bass gig. I was going back a long time. I sucked back then too. It's not like I was a good bass player, but it was really fun. I borrowed my roommate's Rick bass, a Chris Squire model. How's LA these days? Cool, man. I don't know. I love it here still, you know. I mean, I don't know. People talk all kinds of crap about this place, you know, but it's all garbage if you enjoy where you live, right? You know, I have a great time here. LA is a funny, you know, it's such a it's so many different things, you know. And so if people have never been here, many times they'll visit and they'll be like, I don't like it, you know, like, well, what did you do? Well, I don't know. I went to Universal Studios and where'd you stay? West Hollywood. And it's like, well, did you get anywhere else? No, not really, you know. Well, you didn't really see LA then, you know, because LA is it's just this massive collection of cities all kind of put together is really what it is. And they all kind of, I mean, you got so much going on here, you know, that it's really difficult. There's still many parts of this city after 30 years that I haven't been to. So and experienced, and I'm sure I would be like, what's this neighborhood? This is amazing, you know. So I try and, you know, I've lived all over town, from, you know, the east to Santa Monica, from, you know, the valley to Westwood to Hollywood, to all the way out east in, like, you know, Rosemead and Temple City and Pasadena and Sierra Madre. And I've lived kind of all over, at least the northern part of LA, from the sea all the way to about as far east as you can really call LA, you know. And Pasadena is already another city. That's the other thing, is that there's so many different, you know, when you're in Burbank, you're in a different municipality. When you're in Glendale, they all I mean, they don't butt up against one another, but they've got their own police department and their own, you know, city hall and their own, you know what I'm saying. So they're all separate cities. Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, you know, Pasadena, Burbank, Glendale. These aren't just neighborhoods. They're all, to some degree. I mean, Pasadena's got its own very unique identity, I feel like, and it doesn't always feel like you're in LA. It can feel like you're in which is neat because you're only 15 minutes from downtown. But anyways, it just depends where you go. So, what about the Pete Thorn band? Says Steve. Any desire for an actual band? You're the driving force, composer with possibly singer writing lyrics. I'd rather join a band. That's not, you know, to be honest, I like putting out solo records, and I would love to maybe at some point do my own, you know, my own tour and stuff like that. But when it comes to, if I'm in a band with a singer and all that, I want to be like kind of like Chris Buck is in Cardinal Black, you know, like that. I just want to be in a band, you know, if it's a band. It doesn't have to be my name. So I love, this is where I'm most comfortable, to be honest, you know, playing behind singers and stuff, because that's how we made most of my career, you know, is touring as a sideman at least, and also in original bands. I mean, playing with 40 Foot Echo, or, you know, this band Snapdragon. I was in all these different bands that I did where we actually made albums and put out, you know, it's like there's records out there and stuff when I was a band member. So yeah. Let's see. Do I think the Sur Ombre is a good pedal platform? It's, you know, it's a certain sound, the Ombre. It's not gonna do Fendery, sparkly, you know. It's a little bit more Marshall. It's 60% towards Marshall, I think, actually, like an early Marshall sound. So honestly, you know, it gets dirty fairly quick, and but it's a great sound. So if you like that sound, it's a little more like talking about, like, do I think a Tweed amp would be a pedal platform? That's even further in the dirty direction, I think, like a Tweed Deluxe. But consider it a bridge between, I guess, maybe the Tweed amps and then the mid 60s Fenders that we all know, you know, the Deluxe and all that, or Super Reverb. You know, the amps that happened in 62, kind of, you know, with the brown Tolex and everything. They're a bridge between Tweed and then those later, you know, and I think they sound kind of Marshall, you know, what came later as Marshall, just, and there's similarities in the circuits, evidently, from what I understand, to, you know, early Marshalls. So, you know, take that for, I mean, a Plexi can be a pretty good pedal platform. You're just not going to get a ton of sparkly clean out of it. It's got a little bit more of a mid-range aggressive voice. And just think about those first two ZZ Top records, you know, and that's really the sound. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Moving down through the Darren says that he played alto and tenor sax from 4th grade till he graduated high school and can read sheet music, but I never learned to read guitar music. See, that's the thing, and it's because guitar, I feel like, is not a great instrument to read on. If you only had one string, then it would be easy to read on, because that's like any other instrument, right? You've basically got all the frets going up. I mean, on a clarinet, it's like the different combination, right? On a sax, you've got, I think that on a keyboard, you've got, imagine a guitar that just had all the frets, like all the way up, but somehow you could play. It's a guitar with its bunch of strings, is the way that the strings are all, and it's tuned in fourths or whatever, right? All the way across, kind of. It's like having a bunch of keyboards stacked on top of one another almost. So when you're reading, you're like, well, I can play that note here, or I can play it there. And it's the same note. And that kind of what screws you up on the guitar. There's only one middle C on the keyboard, but there's a couple places to play it on the guitar, and then it can throw you a little bit. Like, what position do I want to play in? Oh, and the way the keyboards are all stacked up. I'm saying they're keyboards, but they're strings, on the guitar. So it creates it's not an easy instrument, I find, to read on. I found clarinet easy to read. I found violin, because you're never playing chords really, right? On violin, the most you're doing is a little dyad or something. So less strings, I guess less range on violin, kind of. And it was easier to read on for whatever reason. But on guitar, and also just, the nature of the guitar, you're sort of hitting chords a lot and strumming chords. It's like, how do you notate that like really well? It's just confusing and like, Rover says, are we talking sight reading or chord charts? I mean, we're sort of talking about both, I guess. I was thinking more sight reading, but yeah, look at this guy, Richard. What's up? Backing me up here with what I'm saying. I have a degree in composition and performance, can ready and play saxophone very proficiently, but I can't read crap on guitar. So what do you think about that? Like, Richard, having played saxophone, and like, I just think like it is like having, a bunch of keyboards stacked up on top of one another. I've never been able to figure out a better way to explain it than that, yeah. So, okay. Nashville's number system's easy to learn. It is, I think. Yeah, relatively, right? Simple to learn. Have you ever considered releasing a more affordable version of your signature guitar? So that would require basically making something overseas, which my guitar company of choice, Sir, isn't really geared up or interested in doing at this time, so it's more the nature of the business. I'm very happy with those guys, that's the thing. And they're like family to me, John, and especially in the guitar world, it's like, I'm really picky about my guitars, and the way they do them, I love. I've tried other guitars from other companies that are, less expensive and stuff like that. And I'm always like, this guitar doesn't even friggin' come close to my guitar, like in the, the realm of quality and stuff. And it's just like, I just don't know if I'd be happy. There's some companies out there doing it really well. I think PRS does it well with the SE stuff. Those are good guitars, it's another example. Sterling, Ernie Ball, they seem to have a pretty good thing going with wherever they're getting their guitars made. But many other guitars, I don't really think they're anywhere close to a Sir, as far as. So I would just keep it small, I guess smaller, and kind of exclusive. And I kind of like that, to be honest. Like, I know it'd be great to have inexpensive guitars, but look, when I started playing, I mean, it was like we all worked hard to get up to the point where we could afford a Charvel or a Jackson of the day, right? Like, so this is 80, 82, 83, 84. I got a Kramer. That was a big deal, and I loved that. And then I got a Hamer. Didn't like it as much, but it was a good guitar. It just wasn't for me. And then I finally got my Jackson, which like was a big deal because they were like the hot, when Fender and Gibson were kind of floundering still through the early 80s into the mid 80s. Charvel was like precision, great guitars, right? And they were made in San Dimas, and it was like custom shop, like it's exclusive, it's smaller, and they do these beautiful guitars with these cool graphics and stuff. I mean, that was what was hip at the time, right? And then they started doing the stuff overseas. So Jackson became the US stuff and the guitars coming from overseas, they moved the Charvel name to, Charvel Model 1, Model 2, Model 3. Remember that? And those were Japanese made. Good guitars. They were well done, those early ones. But then they did Charvet, right? I was like, oh, now there's a third level where the guitars are even cheaper and quite as cool. It's like that. The way I feel about it is that it started to dilute the exclusivity and the quality of, like, it felt like, yeah, I get what they're doing, but it feels like it's about money. It didn't feel like it was before. It felt like, yeah, a bunch of dudes in, California making badass guitars that are like, yeah, they're expensive because they're like, really good. Then it was like, okay, now we're gonna go to Japan, we're gonna move the Charvel line only for the Japanese ones at the time, right? That's what it was. And all the US stuff Jackson was for the US stuff. That was how Grover organized this whole deal. Those first, I got one. I got a Charvel Model 2, I think. Good guitar, like that. The Japanese, it was like, this is a nice guitar. It basically feels a lot like my US. Okay, I can see this. And Ibanez was getting hot then and stuff. And it was like Japanese guitars were, so it was like, okay. And then Charvet, and it was like, oh, then it was like the magic. And then you just felt like it dissipate after that, where it was like, whatever. So you'd never want to see that happen, I don't think, with Sir. I think PRS has navigated that pretty well with the SEs by never going to, I don't think they make like a $200 or $300 guitar. But when you got a custom shop exclusive kind of brand, I feel like you got to protect that to some degree. And maybe it's not always got to be this massive push for expansion. Like there's plenty of guitars you can get that are, $300, right? You can't get mine, but I'm kind of okay with that, I guess is what I'm saying. I sort of like it being that it's, it's they're not catering to, it's not a race to the bottom or whatever. So, what else? Somebody says, how do you color your hair? You look 25. John. I got lucky, man. I don't know. I'm my hair never fell out, and that was lucky. Blind luck, because every guy in my family lost his hair. My dad, my granddad's. I don't know how it happened. I was getting ready. Believe me, when I was 22, I was like, you're going to get up and leave any minute, aren't you? It never did. Just got lucky. Let's see. What else are you guys talking about? Are you guys arguing about theory? Do you hear yourself? Yeah, I guess no one should ever learn. I don't think you're speaking to me. You're talking to someone else, but no one should ever learn theory and reading. I'm not saying that. I doubt anybody is either. But I mean, it's not necessary. I'm going to tell you, it's just not necessary if you want to write and perform rock songs to learn theory. Now, would it be helpful in some ways? Sure, and especially if you want to get. If you want to do other things, if you want to, do certain sessions, certainly film and television sessions and things like that. But even that has changed the way that people are making music for those things. So it has changed quite a bit. I am never one to discourage learning, in any way, shape, or form. It's just whether or not you're going to find it useful for what you want to do. It might be time that, it's always going to be somewhat useful, but it might be time better spent writing songs or getting better at, recording and production or something like that, depending on what you want to do. So that's all, so, yeah. What's your current live rig? When I go play over in the UK, and hopefully we do more dates outside of the UK, I hope soon, but with Classic Rock Show, it's a PT-15, a 412 cabinet, my main pedal board that you've probably seen that is right here at my feet, and a host of guitars. And I incorporated the quad Cortex last time too to do some stereo effects and stuff. When I just did the Fight for Fighting tour, I just used a quad Cortex with a couple pedals like the Coco Boost And you know, mainly my 2 Sir signature guitars. That was it. And yeah, so it just depends on what I'm doing, I guess. Been spending weeks trying to get the pick squeal down. Every time I seem to fail. You know, it's really just a matter of the pick has to be right by your thumb. You know, so if normally you're using that much of the tip of the pick, you're going to move your thumb down to the bottom and just so the string hits the pick and then hits your thumb right afterwards. And it's the amount of your thumb, I guess. If it's too much, it'll just choke the note. But if it's just the right amount, you get the chirp thing. And you just have to keep trying it, you know? Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. More knowledge is never a bad thing. Most of the masters of their instruments know how to read, to each their own. Not really, dude. You know? Not most of the master. Who do you consider to be a master? Like, is Jimi Hendrix a master? You know, because I don't think he read. I know Clapton doesn't. So, you know, Eddie Van Halen could read for piano, but I would venture a guess that on guitar, he's probably like a lot of the people here, like Richard, and that where they had a, you know, theoretical background, but didn't really read on guitar. So. I'm not saying I'm just saying it's how it is. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying that's actually the case. Like, you know, unless you're playing jazz guitar or you're playing classical guitar, you're probably not reading, you know. I've got some, you know, Lyle Workman, he can read for sure. He can read and write charts, you know, but he's a friggin' genius and he's a composer that does film and TV. So I've got friends I can think of that do it, you know. Tim can definitely read, you know. But, you know, there's not a lot of reading going on out there, dude. There's just not, you know. I mean, I don't know. I live here and I do this for a living for like 30 years, you know. It's like I don't, you know, like I say, I'm going to go play a gig with friggin' Alice Cooper and Paul Rogers next month. You think I'm going to read to prepare for it? I'm not. There's not going to be any reading going on, you know. There just isn't. Maybe some charts, some chord charts, but that's not reading to me. That's just writing C, D minor. You know, it's like, so it's, I guess it's a different thing. So, you know, we're talking. This is a guitar show, so most of the masters of their instruments, yes, most keyboard players, they absolutely can friggin' read. You know, 100%. You know, most drummers I know read drum notation. You know, proficiently. I guess most, half maybe. They're drummers. They're knuckleheads. Yeah. Donald says he has a Warren DeMartini Snake Signature Series by Charvel. That's cool. Love Warren. Warren's the coolest. Cool dude. Let's see. What else we got here? There's a super chat there I gotta grab. Here's one from Bent Tom. So few likes and thumbs up. Yeah, hit that thumbs up. We got 393 people online. If you don't mind hitting the thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. It helps spread the video across the worldwide interwebs via the algorithm. If you're enjoying the show, our debates. Leroy says I've cost him a lot of money. I'm sorry. I'll compensate you in more demos, but then you're going to spend more money because there's so much great gear coming out. I'll tell you that right now. It's the golden age. Wish you could show another video, says Braxall. Plugging the QC to capture an amp. The one you did misses some parts I like to see. There's nothing to it, man. Honestly, where is my quad? Is it here? What did I do with it? It was right here at my feet. Somebody steal it? It's been stolen. I honestly don't know, actually. It's a little weird. It was right here, but I don't know where it is now. Huh. I feel a little anxiety. There was something a little strange when I came here the other day. The lights in my room were on, but generally that happens when these lights, the video lights were on. Generally, that happens when I come in and I turn on the, or sorry, when the power goes off and then it gets switched back on. That can happen. But I actually don't know where my quad is right now. Well, I'll have to look for that, right? I had it on the floor and I must have moved it somewhere and I'm just not. Oh, I know where it is because I took it to a gig. That's where it is. It's in a gig bag in the hallway. Well, if I had it here, I could show you. But anyways, your question is how to do. So basically, your guitar is going to go into one of the, it's not into input one. It's going to go into one of the other inputs on the unit. And it walks you through how to do that, right? And then you're going to take the capture out send on the quad and go to the front of an amp. When you do that, you need to use an isolation transformer. Okay, otherwise you're going to get a ground loop. So on that capture out ISO transformer, you can use the Palmer, you can use an Eptec Hum Eliminator, you can use the little Samson that I show sometimes. That goes to the input of the amp. Then you're going to take the speaker out of the amp and go into a load box if you're just trying to capture only the amp, right? So SIR reactive load, let's say. Then you're going to take the non-IR out of the reactive load, just the, no speaker sim, nothing, just the bypassed whatever. The amp's loaded down, straight line level. That's going to come out of the reactive load and go to input one of the quad. And then, and with this is going to be when the amp's set up at the tone that you want or whatever. And that's it, really. That's all you got to do, and then you just push capture and there's nothing else to it. But if there's anything in particular you think I could describe, tell me what it is that you would like me to show. Yeah. Okay. It's a good idea. Lauren says, get a lesson from Ellen Plays Bass. It would go viral. She'd have to agree to do it for a video. But I did take a bass lesson, by the way. I have a kind of a similar video with the great Adam Neely. And I'm spacing on the other fellow's name. It's Jamie, I think. Is that right? From Santa Clarita. But anyway, two great bass players, right? And I did it years ago at GitCon, and it's basically like bass lesson with Pete on. I'm a rock bass player. I'm an idiot. I play with a pick. Like, teach me some things about bass. And it was a really, really good bass lesson. So that's on YouTube if you want to see it. Both those guys were terrific. Adam's kind of a musical genius. Talk about somebody that theoretical knowledge, and he's really, really bright, that guy. I really like him a lot. He's a cool person. But anyways, yeah, just check out that if you want to see. The most important thing I remember learning from that wasn't anything technical. It was more the concept of, as guitar players, we tend to make a lot of noise in between, your funky stuff, you're chicka, 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 chicka. With the pick, you're always making all this rhythmic stuff, right? On bass, they were like, don't do that. Like, all that extra noise, just leave that out and just play like cleaner, basically, with no, it's about the fundamental note and the not fundamental, but you know what I'm saying? Like the not with all this extra pick noise and stuff that we do, the funky stuff that we do on guitar. I found that really beneficial. I was like, oh, make it cleaner. Okay. And then I started integrating that concept into every time I did a bass part, trying to keep the bass really distinct without all that extra crap and leave the guitars to do that. And it was like, oh, it sounds better. It sounds more legit now, like cleaner and less cluttered and more solid, my bass playing. So that was a great thing I learned that day, that I'd never really thought about until a bass player described it to me. We don't make all that extra sound you guys do, of course, there's no rules, but. And then I also remember taking, it wasn't a bass lesson, but it kind of turned into one a little bit. The video I did with Doug Pinnock from King's X for his pedal. And I learned just sitting there watching him, every time I get to do one of these things, it's like, this is amazing because I'm getting like a lesson from somebody that's really proficient at something that I don't know that much about. But he showed me how he almost, it's a little contradictory, but he sort of approaches the bass a little more like the guitar, a little bit more from an attitude and bending perspective. So he's bending notes a lot and vibratoing on the bass, shaking things. And that's part of the King's X sound. I never really thought about it. He's got a rather dirty bass tone, and he's just quite aggressive with the way that he, he's not polite with the, and it's like, oh yeah, that's why your band sounds so like there's this thing that's very distinct about his bass playing. This is cool. A lot of attitude. You know, it's all attitude kind of with him. So those are two of the most important things that I learned about bass, was that attitude as well as the playing cleaner. It's almost contradictory, but if you kind of put them together, it sort of works. Ben Tom says the bass playing on the new Chili Peppers album is great. Flea's a guy I've never met, and I would love to meet him actually, because he strikes me as a really interesting musician. You know, he's a very, you know, competent, I think, you know, quite a smart guy and competent musician. I'd love to just pick his brain and, you know, sit and play with him or something, because he's an interesting guy. The Chili Peppers guys, you know, for a band that kind of, you know, party funk band or whatever, the way they are some interesting musicians, I think, and really, like, Chad's amazing. John is obviously amazing. You know, they've got a unique thing that they do. They're not unlike Van Halen in a way, where they're kind of a fun party band, but they are good musicians. You know, there's like, and you know, they've got different shades and stuff and colors that they do, but and they're a band. It's like those guys are the band, you know, and the sound they make together. And I think there's some Van Halen similarities there of, like, there's a lot of fun music. There's some serious music, you know, there's a lot of fun music too, introspective kind of melancholy music. And yeah, kind of Van Halen in a way. You know, when I think about, like, later on, Van Halen got a little more, like, a little darker, introspective, you know, on some of those records, you know, Out of the Dave era, once Sammy was involved, you know, musically went a little that way. I think kind of interesting. But I think there's some similarities there with the Chili Peppers, and both, you know, distinctly LA bands. So Southern California bands. What would be a good pickup in the bridge of a Jackson soloist? Don't like the JB. So the soloist is a very unique guitar in that it's a neck through, right? I think, right? They're neck throughs. They're not set. Neck through, right? Pretty sure. And at least if it's the kind of classic soloist that I'm thinking of, I'm 90% sure it's a neck through, right? So that's just a unique sound, because it's probably going to be a maple neck running all the way through, and you don't like the JB. Well, I'd have to ask what you don't like about it, actually. You know, if you go with a super distortion or something like that, it's going to be that bigger, bolder, wider sound, less hot mids. If you go with a PAF type, I mean, you could be, you know, and something like a soloist, there's a lot of sustain and kind of built in, right? With a big maple neck like that, maybe, and you might like a Thornbucker too. I hate to, you know, just sound like I'm shilling my own pickup, but that warmer, you know, maybe you just want something not as hot as a JB, because the only thing about a JB, they're great for that one thing, which is that hot MIDI thing, you know, but you might want something that's a little more open sounding. So, you know, yeah, you could go a couple different ways. Active too. I mean, that's kind of like the EMGs, you know, an SA85 situation is kind of a classic in those guitars, and some you see those, right? You know, I guess I'd have to ask what it is you're looking for that you're not getting. Donald says he's a big Van Halen fan. Think you're amazing guitar playing. It's definitely in your fingers. Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate that. I do. Got a super chat there I got to get to as well. I think I'm way back in the chat. Yeah, because you guys are talking about Sammy Hagar and the Circle releasing Pump It Up, and I played Pump It Up like a half an hour ago. So I'm going to move down to the bottom of the chat now. I did hear that, actually, the Sammy version of Pump It Up. Such a great tune. Such a killer party song. Oh my God, yeah, I'm back far in the chat. So missed some super chats here. Today, I own a few great guitars, but recently I find myself missing my first nice sax. The intonation was never right, but I loved it. Yeah, it can be hard getting rid of, you know, I missed my first guitar, even though it was a plywood Hondo Strat copy. I mean, I something about it. My mom got it for me, and I feel like I feel guilty about it. Like I let it ended up in a friend's basement. And I just left it there. You know, I feel awful about that right now. Like I would love to have that thing. You know, it meant so much to me the day that I got it. And then you're a teenager and you're an idiot. You know, and you just like forget about things. So it's probably, oh God, I feel like all emotional about it, even just saying it. You know, like what was I thinking? So, anyways, this is what we do when we're kids and we don't you know, there's no substitute for the for time and looking back, is there? So, speaking of which, little family, my sister probably isn't going to watch this. She's not going to watch all this geeky stuff. But it's my sister's birthday today, so shout out to my sister that probably won't watch this, but she's I won't say how old she is. She wouldn't appreciate that. October 16th, her birthday. Here's to you, Jen. And what else? Let's see here. Paul McCartney doesn't read music. Hendrix couldn't either. Yeah, it's going to be most of them. And for sure, John Lennon didn't read music. You know, come on. If Paul didn't read, then John didn't. Yeah. What fuzz would you recommend the most? I really like the 76 you just did. It depends what you want, man. Some of my favorites are the 76 is cool, for sure. I love a muff style fuzz, so I have that on my board right now. It's a Ryra. It's a green Ryra, RYRA, Rock Your Repaired Amp, and it's a muff style. So it's the green one, and it basically cops that 90s big muff thing. What else do I like? I love this. I always talk about this, but the Crazy Tube Circuit Starlight is a great fuzz for those that don't like fuzz, and they're like, I don't get fuzz, but I want a fuzz. Well, get that one, Crazy Tube Circuit Starlight. And a good fuzz face is a terrific thing. There's so many of them out there, you know, anything from Analog Man, the TX fuzz from Clinch. That's a pretty rare pedal, I would say, but it was a great fuzz face. So was Mitch offered and turned down being Van Halen's singer? I don't know if he turned it down. I think it was just a confusing time. 96 or so was going up to 5150 to write with Ed and work with them, and they did some stuff, and he, you know, did some jams with them and stuff, and then he evidently, you know, Ed said, hey man, you're in the band, you know, you're a great singer, and you know, you're congratulations. And then Mitch was like, amazing, you know, and then so he went back to kind of regroup, went back to Nashville, and then they went on MTV and did the reunion thing with Dave, where they all showed up and walked out on stage together, and Mitch was like, what's happening, you know? And then it all kind of fell apart after that. And then within a year or two, you saw Gary Cherone there. So who knows, you know? Yeah, who knows? That's what happened. How can you lose a quad, says Ryan. I forget where things are sometimes, and I forgot. Yeah, I packed it up for a gig this week, and normally it's sitting here on the floor, and I was just like, haven't thought about it for a couple of days, because since the gig, and I was like, what did I do with it? Oh yeah, it's in my gig bag, right? That's how I lose things. But it's not hard, dude. If you could, the inside of my brain looks like a jumbled up mishmash of mush. Sounds like it too. Blue Sky says many people butcher Van Halen because they can't swing. That's true. Do you manage to practice guitar daily? Not really typically practicing. And you say how long typically? I don't really. I sit down and I write. So I use the guitar as a vehicle to write, and then I'm like learning things for work. So for example, I need to start learning all these songs for next month for this gig I've got. So I'll sit down and start working on tunes, you know, and through doing that, that's practice, you know. But generally, it's always towards a thing, a gig or something these days. It's pretty rare that I'm just sitting down doing routine practicing like you would when you're in your formative years, you know, when you're a teenager or whatever. These days, it's all about work. You know, I'm working like 6 days a week at least, and so by work I mean writing songs, recording songs, producing, mixing, doing stuff, playing on them, obviously. Videos, you know, sometimes sessions and stuff for other people, and then, you know, generally gearing up every couple of months for some other live thing or tour. You know, after this show in November, then the next thing will be January. You know, I'll have a month and a half, and then January will be some gigs in the UK with Classic Rock Show. It'll be a bunch of new stuff to learn and to go over, you know, 30 songs or so, you know, of classic stuff that you got to get down and have on your fingers by the time you get there. So I don't show up at rehearsal, you know, how's that go again? No. You want to play through the song like basically as it's going to go, you know, so you got to that's the kind of practice I do, you know, preparing material. Yeah. Okay. A Hollywood actress says, I've been thinking the same. How can one reduce to 1 or 2 electrics and an amp or modeler or amp sim for home use only? Wonder what you guys are talking about. I don't know if that's a question for me or not, but if I can distill it down, I'll try and help and answer. When you do 4-cable method, what device do you use for ground loops? There's a number of different ones that you can get. Here's a simple, cheap one that I've found that works just fine. The Samson ML1. So it's got a XLR on one side and then a quarter on the other. Combo jack on the other side. That's XLR and quarter. So you just plug a guitar cable in here to the input, and then the output, you come out of the quarter inch, say right into the front of the amp. Generally, it's that you got to break that connection, go into the front of the amp. And so you'll plug in that little, this can just sit on top or something of the amp. And then you get a little switch there to lift the ground, right? Ground and lift. And that'll switch in the ISO transformer. And that thing works perfect. It's just fine. Palmer makes one that doesn't have a switch on it or anything, and no XLR. It's just quarter to quarter. The Palmer works fine. Eptec Hum Eliminator, they make a nice 2-channel one. I think they might do a 1-channel, but the 2-channel one's great. You can in and out and in and out. And then you can, you know, if you got, like when I do 4-cable, it's actually more than 4-cable method, but when I do I'm trying to say certain wireless, not my new Shure Axient, it is fine, it's isolated, but certain wireless, I've gotten a ground loop going from the wireless to the pedal board. So I'll have to break that connection. And then also when I use 2 amps in stereo and I'm doing 4-cable, but it's really like 6-cable, or whatever, you know, when you got a 7-cable, I don't know, when you got a second amp in stereo and you're going out of a stereo effect into the return of a second amp, you'll get another loop there. So that's where the 2-channel Eptec comes in, because you need to break the ground in a couple different places. So, you know, that could be a good one if you've got a complex rig to have around. So there's just a few ideas. Yeah. Horst says, am I the only one who uses a modeling amp to create a sound and afterwards try to make it sound even better on a tube amp? That's cool. I mean, you know, that's you're probably not the only one. Probably a lot of people do all their writing and stuff using helixes or axe effects, and then maybe when they go to make a record, you know, they bust out the amps and stuff and try and, you know. The interesting thing is I've done that, and then I've just gone with the plugin or whatever that I used when I was trying to kind of get the idea down first. Because it sounds so good. It's like, whoa, why change, you know? So this stuff is getting so good these days. Sorry, I know I'm behind here and I've got to there's a couple super chats I probably missed and stuff. Here's one here. Ryan says, suggestions on setting amp pedals for humbuckers versus single coils. Less low end on the amp when you're using a humbucker, generally speaking, is the first thing that comes to mind. Also, maybe a little less gain. PT15 setup for Les Paul, but my tones on my teller are usually too bright. Separate pedals for each guitar. You know, I'll walk back and literally just flip the bright switch on the amp sometimes. I change on Classic Rock Show, I change the settings on the amp quite a bit. I've got it down to where I just kind of vary the gain on channel 2 generally, or sometimes on channel 3, or sometimes a bright switch, depending on, you know, the EQ generally stays the same, but with the bright is pretty good at being able to tame, you know, you put your Strat on or something, you feel like the you know, it's just too bright or whatever, you can just go tame it. So yeah, so you know, there's different I mean, the Seymour Duncan pickup booster, you know, that was a pedal that was made to basically, it's kind of a clean boost, I think, but maybe it's just a glorified clean boost. I don't know if there's anything else in the circuit, but you know, it was made to kind of balance single coils to humbuckers and stuff, I think. So you can do that with a pedal, sure. And depending on what else you're switching in, you know, that could be affecting the tones. But don't be afraid to just go back and change the setting. You know, if it's a simple thing, that's the great thing about an amp is that you can do that, like in between songs. You can go back and, cool. Okay, let's go. You know, whereas on a modeler, you're like paging through, you know, whatever. It's more difficult, you know. An amp, you just turn the knob and, you know. You could set up the 2 different channels, too, for your different guitars, I guess. You know, like the 2 different gain channels. Have one set for the Les Paul and one set for the the telly, and then just hit it with pedals for leads and stuff, depending on what channel you're on. You know, that'd be another way to approach it. Yeah. Okay. You guys are talking about pickups again for, this is when we were talking about the soloist, and you're talking about pickups. Sir Aldrich, Sir SSH Plus. I think an SSH Plus is probably pretty close to a JB, or an SSH is anyway. But yeah. Let's see. Custom or Thornbucker. Custom is kind of like a basically a Duncan custom, but with an Alnico 2 magnet. So it's going to be a 13 point something K pickup with Alnico 2 as opposed to Alnico 5. Yeah, maybe it's a warmer sound. You know, if you find the soloist to be aggressively upper MIDI bright, a custom could be a way to mellow that. Just depends. Chris says all soloists are neck through. That's what I thought. Yeah, neck through. That was my memory of it. Yeah. Braxall says that he's having an issue with Quad Cortex. I thought I did it right, was monitoring through my monitors, but when I start the capture, I get this weird feedback through the monitors. Weird feedback. It's hard to say, dude. You might be, there's the ground loop thing on the way going to the front of the amp. You need to use the ISO transformer for that. You also don't want to have your amp sitting too close to the load box or your guitar. Don't sit too close to it, because if you're cranking the amp and all that high gain, and then if it's right beside a load box or whatever, it can create weirdness. So just make sure there's a little distance between your high gain amp or whatever you're using and the load box. And if you've got it all plugged in correctly and the levels look good, you don't really need to listen when you're doing the capture through the monitor. So just keep the levels down. It should be okay. It makes weird sounds when you do the capture. I mean, that's one of the things it does, but I don't think that's what you're saying. So, yeah. So Adolfo says, isn't the Sir SSH Plus supposed to be like a JB, but without the mid spike? I mean, could be. It's pretty similar spec. Alnico 5 hot wind, probably symmetrical. I think a JB is probably symmetrical wind too. So it's probably pretty similar, but just with whatever tweaks that John decided to do. I quite like the SSH Plus. I've used it. It's a fun pickup, but it does kind of what a JB does, where it's like, oh, this is like a little effortless. You turn it on and, a little bit of gain. It's like you're off and running, with a hot pickup like that. That's got that kind of upper mid cut too. And it just sort of sings. So yeah. Been working on your Eruption tutorial from 12 years ago. Yep. It's a long time ago. Feels like longer, to be honest. Just wanted to say thanks for putting together such a comprehensive guide. Thanks. A lot's changed in the last 12 years. Like when I think about the way I filmed that and how crappy it was, the way that I, did it production wise. And now I'm like, it's just like so much has changed in a decade. What it'll be like in another 10 years, I don't know. Maybe I'll be hopefully sitting on a beach sipping a margarita. But maybe I'll still be working. We'll see. No, I love working. I'll be sitting on a beach working. We'll have advanced to the point where we can have studios on the beach and not get sand in the speakers. I had a Fernandez Brad Gillis Super Strat. That's kind of cool. I remember those when he sort of endorsed Fernandez and they did a copy of his guitar. I got to see that guitar. He showed it to me, which was a thrill. It's like a 62 or 63 Strat, right, that he had so heavily modified, and it has the old original Floyd on it, I handed it to me and I was like, dude, I've been watching. I saw you play this guitar with Ozzy, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it was at the time. That was 10 years ago. I think it was like 2012 that I met him and he showed me that guitar. It's crazy. Time's flying. Let's see. I've heard the DiMarzio Norton described as a smoother, less hot JB. That's interesting. Interesting. Jeff said he got a second Thorn guitar. What'd you get? That's cool. Is it Thorn, like the or is it a Pete Thorn Sir model? Or is it Ron Thorn? Hmm. Oh, that's interesting. Richard says his first guitar was a 25th anniversary Strat. I remember those, the silver. God, isn't that wild? That because I remember those, and it's wild that that was only 25 years from the dawn of the Strat to when they made that. But that's about right. It'd be 77 or 78 or 79 that they came out with those, right? So 25 years from 54, so 79. Yeah. It's funny, man. My local store, Lilo's, one of them in Edmonton, they had two of those, and they kept those guitars forever. They bought them brand new, and then I started playing guitar in 80 or 81 or something, 81 probably. So they had a couple, and they were just like a year or two old, and they were hanging them on the wall, like, oh, and they probably would have sold them, but I'm sure they were asking a premium. Well, they never sold them, and they still had them up until like recently. It was only recently that store closed within the last few years, and they had a lot of the same guitars back then that or a lot of the same guitars, all those years, that they'd never sold. There was in particular a 54 55 Les Paul Black Beauty with the the whatever they called it, the staple Alnico neck pickup. You know the one I mean. And that guitar was there forever. Anyway. Oh, fuzz that works well on bass. A rat is great on bass. The green muff is great on bass. So there's a couple. I really like rats on bass. Other drives that are great on bass. Those are the main ones. The muff, like I know the big part, I do believe, of Tim from Rage Against the Machine and Audio Slave is a muff, a green muff, I think, on his bass sound. Pretty sure. But also, well, it depends on the rig that you're doing. If you've got a fuzz with any kind of clean mix on it, that can be helpful if you're just running a pedal in front of one amp. But also, if you're running a biamped rig, then it gets more complicated. A Marshall and an SVT or something, or you can do that in the plugin world pretty easily. But try like in a modeler, it's a great way to kind of audition them. Like in a Helix, let's say, you could pull up two chains and have in one an SVT clean, and then in the other one put a Marshall Plexi or something, or a Marshall Super Bass or something, set it kind of clean, and then put pedals in front of it, virtual ones, and see what sounds good. Virtual rat, virtual big muff, and then you can kind of that's the coolest way to do fuzz on bass, and in my opinion, is the blended thing, because you can keep the low end clean and distinct. If you want an indie thing, though, you might not want that. You might want the whole bass sound to be fuzzed. So it just depends. That big, massive sound, though, and certainly like in Rage and stuff, a lot of people think it's guitar, and Morello's tone is a part of it for sure. But there's so much going on in the bass department with the doubled riffs and stuff, with the way his tone, locked with the guitar, has this big sound. Tom's sound wasn't really that dirty. Most of the dirt is actually in the bass. It's interesting. And another thing about Tom that I found interesting is evidently always neck pickup. I didn't like, he uses the bridge pickup as a kill, on his guitars. And, when he was playing that blue kind of, shredder looking Strat that he had and everything, is always the neck pickup. So he dials the amp for the neck pickup, and then he's just doing the stutter thing with the toggle switch and stuff. So I found that interesting because I didn't even know that when I had to play a lot of his parts with Chris Cornell. I would use the bridge pickup a lot. But for example, we did this whole set of Chris Cornell music last week at the Whiskey. It was after I was here last week doing the show. I went and did that. I did all of Like a Stone on the neck pickup. So I used to do it where I'd hit the bridge pickup for the choruses, just those big long power chords on the chorus. When I played with Chris, I always did that. I always switched to the the bridge pickup. Not last week. I just used the neck, and it's like, yeah, that sounds perfect, actually. Like, not a lot of distortion, a little tremolo on the sound, and it's funny because I was using the quad for all the effects and switching my amp and everything. It was my only pedal board, quad Cortex with a PT100. And I was able to dial in the best solo sound for that song that I've ever had for Like a Stone. Just using the neck pickup on my signature guitar, and then whatever I have on that sound with the delay, the echo and everything, it just sounded great. It was like, it sounds really good. And the pitch in the quad works perfectly with the expression pedal. So like I say, those things are great, man. They've been a real boon. I've had a really good time with the quad and using it to, you get it on the gig. That's always the telltale, like get it out there and then you're playing. I'm like, man, this sounds good right now. Like really, really good. The different tones when you might hit a sound, go, oh, that doesn't sound that good. It's disappearing in the mix or something. But when you hit a good one that you dialed in just right and it's like really working with the band, it's like, yeah, that's how, yeah. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. What's my favorite speaker? A good old G12M of some sort. I love the blackback speakers of the late 70s because I feel like they have a little more top end than some of the greenbacks from the 60s. And I love good greenback from the 60s and the early 70s. And the pulsonic cones and all that. Supposedly there was a fire and they lost the original paper recipe or something around 73. I don't know. So the magic ones from the 60s are worth more and all that. I don't know. Those late 70s ones, they sound great to me. But I'm a Van Halen nut and I like a little more aggressive, A greenback can be a little relaxed or a little, not aggressive sometimes, And that's when you get into G12H30 or V30 or something. Sometimes for metal, they can be right. But honestly, a blackback, I feel like works pretty good for. What do you guys think about that? Anybody, you guys out there like greenback aficionados or, the various varieties? Like I think a good late 70s, 75 hertz G12M blackback, pretty rocking for hard rock sounds, at least, I don't know about metal, but I use it in videos all the time to do heavy stuff. And it's like, it sounds pretty good. Pretty good. For sure. So you've mentioned doing amp reviews. Would you consider doing a rundown of mini heads? I have a Friedman, Vox, Husenkettner, plus a few more. Very useful and not huge prices. Well, I've done videos for quite a few mini heads, actually. I've done the Friedman, the Soldano, the Diesel, the little guys that are, what do you consider mini? Like sub 15 watt? Because like my, like when I look at this, I'm doing videos here for this Pink Taco amp right now, and I've got, of course, my PT15 signature amp right here. Those aren't mini, I guess, right? Excuse me. I just wonder what you consider mini. The blinds are so blurred these days with these products, Like I've got this one to do here. I'll show it again. I showed it a couple of weeks ago, but this is this TX watt. So this is 100 watt Class D power amp married to a tube preamp. So I've got to get to making a video for this very soon. This thing sounds really good. Is this a mini head? I guess it's just not the exact same form factor as what you might consider, the other little solid state guys. So I don't know. There's so many different products out there these days. It's wild. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, there's a super chat that I missed. Can the new Friedman 20 watts keep up on stage with a loud live band? Or are they louder than the PT15? No, I wouldn't say they're louder than the PT15. Honestly, I think the PT15 we've probably underrated. I mean, it's probably, we could call it 18 or 20, depending on, John likes to do that conservatively, I think, but no, I mean, they're similar, I don't, it depends on the band, I always say. And by keep up, it's like, do you need clean headroom? So if you've got a telly and you're playing in a country band or something with a hard hitting drummer and you need some clean headroom, probably not, you probably want the 40 watt. But if you're doing Van Halen or something and you're just kind of like in a club, I mean, this little PT20 actually sounds really great. If it's going to be mainly dirty and you're going to be pushing it, because there is like a, on a PT15, you've got a true clean channel. And anybody that's got one out there will attest, you can push it and it'll get pretty loud, but you're going to be pushing that clean into it. There's a range of breakup there that for some people, depending on the style of music, as you're hitting the power amp harder and getting a little less headroom and it's grinding up a little bit, could be desirable, could be not what you want for a certain, depending on the band you're in. So it really depends on the music, Yeah. If the music is hard rock saturated and your drummer is medium volume, you're probably totally fine. If you got a hard-hitting drummer and you need clean headroom, probably not. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Braxall, you were just asking again about the quad Cortex monitoring through your monitors. When you start the capture, you get this weird feedback. The main thing is just as long as your amp is plugged into the load, you're probably not hurting anything. I don't want to 100%, but it's like if you're coming out of the speaker output of your amp and you're going into a load box that's taking the load, like if it's a sur-reactive load and you're seeing the blue light come on the front, you're probably protected, as far as the amp goes, if you're getting really crazy sounds and stuff, though, it's just hard to it's like trying to be a doctor and diagnose a problem from over the internet. It can be difficult unless you actually see the patient. Yeah, just make sure you're always plugged into a load. Yeah. Couple more super chats there I got to get to. Any markings you put on the first Hondo? Yeah, you could say so. I sanded it down and then I painted it white and then dripped red paint all over it so it looked like it had blood all over it. So yeah, it's pretty distinct. It's awful looking what I did to it, So if you ever see a white Hondo body with a bunch of red paint dripped all over it, I mean, I'm sure somebody just turfed it, probably ended up it's probably decomposed and it's become a tree or something at this point. I don't know. But yeah. John says, what's the story with that killer groove that was in your brain on IG yesterday? That's a video that I'm making for the little Friedman amp. So it's coming. I'll put it out on Tuesday. Will you get back to clinics again? I just did a couple in Germany when I was there for Guitar Summit. So I'd be happy to do it again. If I did another one, I need to come up with another concept. That's the only thing, because I've kind of burnt the other one. I feel like, I did it everywhere. So is Sir going to do a PT30? Not a 30, but a 50. We've talked about a 50 for a long time. It's just getting it done, so, 40 to 50 watt proper 2 or 3 channel tube head. That is basically will probably become my main amp. I use the 15 now live, but would I like a little more headroom? And could I? Yes, I would. The 15's working out great, but it'd be nice to have just that little extra power and reserve and stuff, and basically have what I've gotten. It's not going to be exactly the same, though. I'll tell you, with the PT50, what I want to work towards is a little bit more of the one thing I want to be able to get is a true sort of plexi voicing on the channel 2 sort of the amp, a little bit more straight up plexi vibe, when you've got the gain up on 4, 5, 6, it's got that a little more open, a little less front end gain, and that'll all be switchable and stuff, and you'll still be able to get a ton of gain out of it. So that's what I'm working towards. I can get there now with, but I just want to be able to, just a slightly different thing. So a few super chats here that I should grab. So I'm going to move down in the chat. I'm sorry if I'm missing your questions. I get so damn long-winded. There's Rory. Hey man, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate that. And a few of you guys, no questions here. That's really nice of you. I appreciate it. Here's one more. Would you recommend the Kelly attenuator in 2022? The Kelly attenuator was really good, and I don't know how it worked exactly. I think it's like an LPAD style attenuator essentially, but it always sounded really good to me. He made a good one, and I think it had the foot switch too. I have one somewhere. I haven't used it in years, but my memory of it is that it's great. A good, solid, like more transparent than most. For that passive kind of attenuator that he made. By the way, I've been using my Kelly a little bit. I've got it back here. And I used it in that, I believe, in the Fuzz video. Is that what I used it for? Oh, no. The video for the MXR Duke of Tone. That's what I used the Kelly for, which it's such a good sounding amplifier. Jim made a great amp, It's its own thing, but it's great. Yeah. Who's this? Alex. Are you a fan of Gary Moore and his tone? Yeah, I mean, he, definitely made an impact with his. I remember loving his, when he did Corridors of Power and all that. He had a really cool sound back then. Even when we was playing a Strat with the single coils, it sounded really cool. And then when he still got the blues, that was SLO, I think, and stuff. And he had that beautiful fat sustaining thing. But his sound he had a lot of sound, whatever he was playing through. He had a lot of tone in his hands, I think, Gary. So, Victims of the Future, yeah. Corridors of Power, you mentioned as well. Yeah, great, powerful. I should go back and listen again. I'd like to go back and listen. But I remember when I heard it, it had an impact on me, thinking like, wow, that sounds really good. A little like, here, there was a number of players that when you heard their sound, you're like, oh, like what are some underrated ones? How about Ronnie Latecro from TNT? He had a really cool guitar sound. Or YNT, two guitar players. He had a really good guitar sound too. Just really powerful. Who else? Warren, of course. George Lynch. Certain guys, they just had this ballsy rock tone. And Gary was kind of early days, right? 82 or 83, probably Corridors of Power came out, something like that. And it sounded so cool. John Sykes always, great guitar sounds. Yeah, just really cool. Besides Eddie, the other guys that had great tones. That particular type of tone, hot rock tone. Really, really good. Brian Too Loud McLeod, come on, little Canadian. Gotta get the Canadians in. Kim Mitchell. Kim had great guitar sounds, always. Really cool. Have you uploaded any presets to the Quad Cortex Cloud? There might be one on there that I kind of put on there by accident, I think. I think it's my Jose modded Germino. I think it ended up out there. I didn't mean to make it public, but I did. And then I thought, oh, well, it's out there now. So I should do a couple and just put them out. I know it's just like, but anyway. Everything about reviewing older gear that still sounds good. It's just, the reality is doing such things takes so long, it's like, it takes a hell of a long time to do. So, like, it's just a extensive project every time you do a video. And I've got a lot of videos to make for like new stuff. So Braxall says, are you okay? You look tired. I was a little tired getting up today. I fell asleep in front of the TV last night, and I was just exhausted. And then you wake up at like 2:30 in the morning, and you're like, ugh. And I've been doing this thing lately where I wake up at like 8 a.m. or something. But now I only slept 6 hours. It's not enough, So, and then I kind of look at my phone for a while, and then I'll fall back asleep eventually after 45 minutes or something. And then I sleep really hard. And like when I wake up, when the alarm goes off, and I had to get up, get going, get the cat fed, do everything I got to do, and then get over here. I'm tired when I get up, So I don't know if it's just like shitty sleep patterns or whatever, but no, I'm fine, man. I feel good. What else we got here? Thin Lizzy was one of the toughest sounding bands ever. They sure were, man. Thin Lizzy, if anybody hasn't seen the Phil Lynott documentary that's on, is it AMC or Prime? Might be on Prime. Anyway, it just came out like last year. Really, 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 really good. Really enjoyed it. Talks very little about John, unfortunately, but because when he was in the band, that's some of my favorite. The metal Thin Lizzy was kind of one of my. I like it. I mean, like the Cold Sweat and all that. This is just friggin' badass. Like, but people think, I don't know. Maybe that's just because that's when I started listening to them. It was kind of around that era when I got into music, I guess. That was the most current sort of Thin Lizzy, and but they're such a soulful band, like with such a deep. He was such a good lyricist and storyteller. He really painted a picture, and they're very unique. They're such a unique band in the rock world. I think they're such a unique band, and with that kind of interesting aspect, a rotating kind of cast of terrific guitar players, kind of coming through, from Gary to John to, you know, all the different guitar players that played in Thin Lizzy. And so you got these different, it was almost like Thin Lizzy featuring, you know, this guitar player, how this guitar player, and this guitar player, and the way they would interpret the music. So anyways, yeah. John Sykes is God. He's just a cool guitar player, man. He's really cool, you know, really, really cool. I got to know him a little bit, like you know, through Dave and stuff. I think we got to meet these guys that were like such big influences on me. And I always loved John. And it was you know, it's a little bit, I don't know if reclusive is a word, but he's just, you know, the life he chooses to lead. He's not out there a lot in the last, you know, 20 years or so. And, but I did the video for the Soldano Neural DSP plugin, and he called me, you know, he got my number from Dave, and he called me to tell me he thought it was badass. I remember the phone rang and it said, you know, when iPhone guesses a name, it said, maybe John Sykes. I was like, that's friggin' cool, you know. And I picked it up, and I'd met him a couple times at Dave's shop, and I was like, hello. And he's like, hey man, I just saw the video that you did for that. And I just had to tell you, like, it was badass. Like, sounds so cool. And I was like, man, that makes my year, you know. He's just cool, man. I mean, he's a legend, you know. He had such a cool, unique, like European sound. Somebody else mentioned Michael Schenker, and I feel this similar way about him, and Adrian Vandenberg. You know, European rock guitar players, they have a certain, you know, whether they're from you know, England or Germany or Ireland or something, they have a unique sort of bent, whereas American rock guitar players, we always seem to have a little bit more of a well, there's a little bit more blues going on all the time, I think. And those guys, there's a little more modal going on, is maybe what it is. And also this just kind of fiery thing that, not that American guitar players don't have that, but I just love that modal thing, the melodic, that's veering away from blues, you know. Even Gary had that, you know. Gary, and he still got the blues and everything. He had basically a blues career after, but his rock playing, you know, he started out rock, and with his aggressive, Gary's the, you know, maybe one of the first, right? Well, okay, Michael Schenker, you know, similar time, I guess, but Michael, like his melodicism or whatever, the way they approach things, I just love that sound, you know. Always really love that sound. So, I mean, John just, the solo to Cold Sweat, when he does that bend at the beginning, there's the, you know, the crazy part at the beginning, the intro, dun, 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 all that stuff, and then he goes, and he does that run afterwards. It's like, oh my god, like that is like the coolest. If you never heard the solo to Cold Sweat, this is what I'm talking about. It's just like, it's just friggin' ripping, like cool, you know, just so cool. Anyway, do I sound excited? I am. You should get Steve Lukather and Neil Sean on the show. I would love to. I know. I gotta get some more guests. I agree. So Uli John Roth years ago, and he was neat. Yeah, he was great. Yeah, he's great. He's great. I've told my Uli stories about like jamming. You know, got to do the jam in Germany with him, and he was standing right beside me, and he leaned over to me and he goes, "I'm sorry, my amp is very loud." I'll never, these are the things you don't forget. And I said, I know, I love it. They're like, don't apologize, you're Uli. Please, just, you know. And I remember watching him with Phil X when he did a couple songs on his own, and we walked out front and just stood in front of us, and he's got his crazy guitar, you know, and it has the fuzz and everything. Is it built into the guitar? Maybe. But the amp is basically a plexi. I think it was a Black Star. It's Black Star endorser at this point. It's basically a plexi, 4-hole plexi, I think, just really loud. And like, yeah, man, like that's my jam right there. I love it. Don't have to apologize to me, my friend. You got the right guy. Guitars for your project. Have you considered the new Mac Mini Studio? Need to upgrade. They look amazing. I went with a laptop, after careful consideration. So I've got the M1 and all that, and the fast chip and all the stuff. But I thought I need an editing machine. Like, so I didn't want to. I've traditionally had two computers: a studio computer here, and then a laptop where I work at home and also take on the road and stuff. And then I thought, if I get a laptop, maybe I don't need to do this. I can get a nice monitor at the studio, and then just cart the computer around. You know, I can put it beside me right here on my desk, have it plugged into the big monitor. You know, Bluetooth up. If I want to have this computer off to the side, then I'll have two screens, and I can have still a separate keyboard and mouse or whatever, just Bluetoothed up to the laptop and work like I always have with a monitor in front of me and the computer over, you know. So that was my thinking, is that maybe then I can just have one machine as opposed to, you know, having two separate computers, because that comes with a whole host of moving my Waves plugin authorizations around. And when I update one, I got to update the other one. Sometimes, you know, you go to a new version of Final Cut, you forget to do it on the laptop, and then you go to the laptop and it's like, you'll need to update. And oh God, now it's going to take me half an hour to update the software before I can get to work. So all that stuff. So I thought maybe I just want to move to one machine. So long story short, that's why I got a laptop, a full blown, and I have yet to kind of integrate it into the studio. I'm still on my old, you know, this is a 8-year-old, top of the line at the time, but an 8-year-old iMac that I'm on right now. And it's going to be, this is probably the last year for this computer. It's like slowing down, and I hate it when you start it up and it takes like 10 minutes to kind of, and then it's like, and then it finally like, okay, now it's working like full speed. You know what I'm talking about with Macs? After 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years, they start doing that. You know, it's like not fast anymore. It gets adequately fast after 10 minutes. What's that all about? You know, it's like, why do they do that? Anyways. Megadeth covered Cold Sweat. Did they? Have you heard the new Megadeth album, by the way, you guys? It's really good. I was in Paris walking around, and I went in this metal record store that I love. I was thrilled to see it was still there, because there was a lot of stuff when I was in Paris that wasn't there anymore. Just some places that I'd liked, shops and a couple bars and stuff, and they closed. Pandemic, who knows what, you know, from the last time I'd really hung there. But this metal record store was still there, which is it's in the Marais, and it's like, if you ever just search record store in the Marais, you'll find this place. It's killer. It's like the guy's got tons of cool stuff, like great, just metal and rock and all kinds of stuff. But he was playing the new Megadeth album when I went in there, and I was like, what is this? Like, while I was looking around, I was like, this is really good. And I asked him, I'm like, this new Megadeth? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, it's really good. And he's like, it is really good. I know. That's why I'm playing it. That's what I was thinking. It was, but yeah, he agreed with me. But yeah, it was cool. Any word when your instructional video will be coming out? You know, I neglected to ask them, so I need to look into that. So thanks for reminding me again. Not sure yet. It's supposed to be around now, but I just got to check on it'll be very soon. And I will promote it extensively when it comes out. Who produced more guitar gods, Thin Lizzy or the Birds? Yeah. Thin Lizzy. Do you mean the Yardbirds? With Jimmy and Jeff and everybody? And the Birds is cool too. But are you familiar with Swedish band The Sounds? No, don't really know that band. Surfer Bee is here from Boston. Humble Pie, another amazing band. Absolutely. I went back recently and listened to a bunch of Humble Pie because I just didn't know the music that well. And when I interviewed Peter for the show, I wanted to go listen. So I spent that week listening to a lot of Humble Pie. Wow. Like, if you haven't listened to a lot of Humble Pie, check it out. They're so great. Just, you know, terrific. And Peter's such a brilliant guitar player. Any recent bands last 10 years with killer guitar tones? Oh, let me think. Groundbreaking. I mean, there's been, you know, Yvette Young is a groundbreaking player that's kind of reignited guitar community in many ways. If you haven't, you know, she approaches the guitar in a completely different way and I like a lot of her sounds, for sure, you know, but it's more about her overall musicality and stuff. If we're talking about groundbreaking, you know, it's going to be guys like Tosin and you know, that when I watch them, like, what the hell is even going on? Or, you know, Tim Henson or these guys, you know, that are like, It's completely different than what, you know, I grew up doing, or probably most of you watching this, you know, with that kind of, I mean, there's no blues to it really, and there's no, you know, there's even bending. You know, he got in the whole boomer bends thing. You know, but he's right. I mean, in a way, it was like, I don't even think he was criticizing. He was like, you know, that sound like that older players make. You know, we don't really do that. We do this other sound. I think that's all he was really trying to say. He just used the word boomer. It's probably created a negative connotation, but you know, they are really amazing. You know, technically what they're doing. Other, you know, players that are revolutionary. I will say this. I was thinking about this on the way to work this morning. This is work, by the way. This is my work. I was thinking that, like, people just aren't as amazed by things anymore. You know, everybody's a little blasé. It takes a lot to have an impact. And maybe that's just age too, because as I get older, you know, maybe some of you guys feel that, like, you're just not as amazed by things. And I think that's a standard thing with getting older. But I still think kids are like, you know, even though attention spans are shorter and stuff, I brought up a vet. When I go to a show, you know, or when I see Mateus Asado play, so a vet or Mateus, let's say, and there's the younger people there, you know, they're watching them, and they're watching them play. They're hanging on every lick, like a lot of times, or they're singing the licks, you know, and they're really excited about these guitar parts. Like, you see them jumping up and down, and like, you know, they're not huge arena crowds, but the folks that are there are really into it, is what I'm saying. So whether or not we recognize it, you know, I think it's happening with, you know, it's carrying on, and it's going to be fine. You know, guitars, everybody talked about the guitar. Remember that? Like, oh, guitar demise, like 2017, oh yeah, that didn't happen. You know, did it? You know, if anything, it was just more new guitar players and people approaching it in different ways. So I'll pick a vet as my groundbreaking player. You know, she's the closest thing to me. Oh wow, it's 2 already. God, I've been going a long time. 2 hours. Okay, I'll hang another 10 minutes or so and then go. She's the closest thing to me to an innovator in the same way that Eddie Van Halen was, in the sense that she I brought this up before, so I don't want to bore people by saying the same things over and over, but like, she had an illness. She had a previous, you know, musical background growing up playing piano and violin, very, you know, lessons, studying proper, whatever, all those years. And then when she was a teenager, a preteen even, I think, she got quite ill and she ended up in the hospital, and somebody brought her a guitar, and she thought, I'm going to play this, but I'm going to play it however the hell I want to play it. And she just would retune it and do different things on it. You know, that she had this musical background. She could hear music, played music, had a theoretical background in these other instruments, but guitar, she just would tune. And when you do that, when you change the tuning, of course, all bets are off, and now you're just using your ear. And I love that she did that. And to me, that kind of reminds me of like an Eddie Van Halen spirit, like piano, you know, and then like pick up the guitar and just approached it almost like, you know, a little more keyboard oriented in his compositions and stuff. And his techniques didn't see the limitations. He just do things, you know. So yeah, I think of her as kind of an innovator in that same way, for sure. You know, plus she's friggin' hilarious and one of my best friends. Arthur says, because one must support Pete and the need for coffee. Why, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's going to be time for more beans eventually, but I'm in pretty good shape for beans right now, although I haven't seen him here today. Vincent and his Track 5 Coffee Company has provided me with some beans that are currently fueling my musings. Have you heard Tyler Bryant's new album, Shake the Roots? I have not. Should I listen to it? Yeah, tons of great stuff I'm learning here today. Tons and tons. Thank you for that recommendation. I will keep that on my radar and check it out. Guthrie Govan got me excited about guitar again when he came out. Yeah, Guthrie was total, like, just amazing, you know, when he came out. Great guy too. Wolfpack comes to mind. Yeah, super great guitar playing, you know, kind of the cleaner, funky, fun thing that some of these guys are doing. That's, you know, it's not exactly, you know, they're sort of taking from, you know, the earlier styles and stuff, but supercharging it a little bit and doing it in such a fun way that it becomes its own thing, I think, you know, and that's really cool, I think. So I love that. Corey Wong, folks like that, you know, doing their thing. So what else here? Let's see. The internet and technology made everyone desensitized to greatness. Yeah, I've been, you know, I'm feeling like a little bit I'm definitely addicted to my phone, you know, and it's a problem, and I don't like it. You know, the scrolling and you know, I thought how awful Twitter is this week. I thought I gotta stop looking at this application. You know, it just upsets me. So been thinking about that, and just absolutely like you know, we're so addicted to just seeing things and so blasé about things these days when it all is just coming at us like that. So I feel like maybe I'm going to try and do a little bit of a detox on all that kind of stuff and just stay away from it as much as possible for the next couple of months while I'm working on music, learning music for this new show. And also I have a lot of work to do, videos and stuff. And I probably end up wasting a lot of time. I can be critical of other people when they do it, you know, like using the phones and seeing everybody looking at the phone, and you know, you go to a Starbucks or you go somewhere and there's even friends sitting together and they're all separately looking at their phones and not talking to one another and all that kind of shit, right? I just feel like it's really toxic and not good. And I'll look at people and be very critical and judgmental in my own mind about it. And then I do it. So, you know, I don't think it's good, is all I'll say. And I think that I need to, you know, I know, just kind of discipline, I guess, myself a little bit. Because must support. Oh, I think I already hit that one. The need for coffee. Thank you. Yes, always comes back to coffee. Yeah. Ian says, I think a big difference is bands like Slayer are to young kids. They same way bands like the Beatles were to us, just there. The Beatles to me were my favorite band when I first started listening to music and growing up. The Beatles had a huge impact on me. So, and the Who, you know, so I think that's kind of interesting that I gravitated at first towards that older music. That was, the Who was still active when I started playing with Kenny Jones as the drummer, but you know, the biggest hits were whatever from the early days, whatever. And I was really into that. I mean, I loved the Who and I loved the Beatles. Those were the two bands that I think initially really fired me up, you know, to play music and stuff. So, and I see a lot of that in kids these days too. I mean, you see a lot of kids that are into, you know, whatever, Guns N' Roses or, you know, Van Halen or, you know, they have a real appreciation. They must find it through their parents or older siblings or something. I don't know, but somehow, they get really into it. And I think it's probably just the authenticity, you know, of the real bands playing real instruments, you know, and all that stuff, and how it, you know, it's kind of more rebellious of a time in a way. Like nowadays people are, I mean, it's cool, but music that comes out now can feel a little safe or predictable, and that stuff feels a little dangerous and unpredictable. And I think as human beings, when you're a kid, that's appealing, you know? So it's like, I mean, I remember showing a young guy AC/DC, and, you know, for those about to rock, I think, with the cannons firing off and everything, you know, and Angus running around like a madman, and then on Brian's shoulders or whatever, you know, and I'm like, it's pretty cool, right? And he's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And he was like 7, you know, he's like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, you know, like, so I think kids, they see some of the rock that we grew up, and certain kids, it's going to, you know, you can see it, you know, where they're like, yeah, that's my, you know, I'm into that, you know? So anyway, what else? Not bagging. There's lots of great stuff that comes out these days too. It's just, we're also, you know, more and more young people suffering from neck complaints. I think that's me. I'm not a young person. My neck is thrashed. Yeah. I call them plasma zombies. Yeah, people looking at their phones. Wouldn't be much Pete Sunday Live without internet. Good point. We're all here, you know. I agree. At least this is a little more interactive. I don't know, where we can talk to one another. Like, I think that's a little different, the community aspect of it. Hopefully we're using it for a good, just the constant need to scroll and zone out, I don't think we're zoning out here. So I'll draw a little bit of a distinction when you're doing a live show that you can type and we can all talk and stuff. This is a time where we're hanging virtually, using the technology to kind of hang out. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, unless you're ignoring your family when you should be hanging with them on a Sunday or something. Yeah. What editing software do you use? Final Cut Pro. Do you edit all your videos? Yes, generally speaking. I've had other people do a handful, but I mean, the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, that's like 10 videos out of, I don't know how many now, 700 or 600 or 500. I don't know how many I've done. I'm not sure how many are on YouTube. It's many hundreds. Ben's got a guest on tonight. That's Mr. Ben Coombs up there in Canada. Hope you can all join him later. Charles Green as his guest. Yeah. What else we got here? Ben Tom wants you to check him out on Grindr. Let's see. My knees hurt says, great show today. Thanks, BT. Take care. I guess I should go. I should go eat some lunch and then keep working. I got work to do. But you guys are the best. And this week you're going to see videos for Dave's Pink Taco amp. What else I got coming? That TX Watt, that's got to happen. I got a couple pedals from Orange. I've got the amp, preamp pedal jobby from Black Star. I've got a really exciting thing here, but that's not going to happen this week. Couple of Victory jobbies. I need to look at my schedule and see. I'm probably behind. So much to do. I feel overwhelmed a lot lately. So let's get to work, shall we? Which means I got to go. You guys take care, and I'll see you next Sunday. Thanks for being here. As always, thanks, Ben, for being here and being my moderator. And I hope you all have a terrific week. Take care. Be careful out there. Be nice to one another. Thanks so much.